Bobby Lewis, a 59-year-old warehouse worker, pressed his back against the cold metal of container MX7751 as footsteps echoed through Zone 6. It was 2:58 a.m. on July 3, 2024, and he was 3 minutes away from stealing $26 million in cartel cash from the Texas Forward Freight warehouse, where he'd worked for 14 years. His supervisor, Martinez, was walking straight toward the loading dock, where Bobby had just finished transferring the money into his truck. One shout from Martinez would bring armed cartel soldiers, the FBI, and certain death. But Bobby owed $75,000 to underground poker games controlled by the same cartel whose money he was stealing, and they'd given him until July 4th to pay or die. Bobby gripped his forklift keys tighter and made his choice. He stepped out of the shadows to face Martinez. But this moment didn't begin with a desperate gambler stealing millions from Mexican drug dealers. It started 6 months earlier when Bobby Lewis first realized exactly whose money he'd been moving through the Texas border for over a decade. Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. What city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. Now let's get back to the story. Bobby had perfected the art of being invisible. As a warehouse worker at Texas Forward Freight in Laredo, Texas, he moved $200 million in goods monthly, had keys to restricted zones, worked alone on night shifts, and earned $32,000 annually while handling millions in merchandise. Nobody questioned the quiet man who just did his job. The call that changed everything came at 11:15 p.m. on a Tuesday in January. The voice was cold and professional. "Bobby Lewis, you owe us $75,000. You missed your payment again." Bobby's hands gripped the phone tighter. He'd been gambling at underground poker games for 3 years, trying to win enough money to escape his dead-end life. Instead, he'd lost everything and borrowed money from the wrong people. "I need more time. I'm good for it. You know I am." "No more time, Bobby. You have until July 4th to pay in full, or we collect another way. You know what that means." Bobby's savings account showed $3,200. After 14 years of backbreaking work, that was everything he had. His debt was 20 times larger. That same night, moving containers during his regular shift, Bobby noticed something wrong with container MX7749. It weighed exactly what the manifest said, but it sounded different when he moved it. The weight was distributed wrong, too concentrated in the center like bundled cash. Using his forklift access during quiet hours, Bobby investigated. These containers from Mexican routes never got scanned by customs. They were marked as machine parts but weighed more than industrial equipment. The same buyers picked them up monthly, always cash transactions. Security footage got accidentally deleted for these pickups. Bobby had been moving freight for 14 years. He knew exactly how different cargo should feel. These containers were wrong. The weight distribution screamed bundled money. He found a loose panel on container MX7749. Inside, he glimpsed vacuum-sealed packages stacked floor to ceiling. His heart stopped when he realized what he'd been moving for months: cartel cash returning to Mexico after drug sales in America. Bobby started keeping detailed notes in a composition notebook. 12 to 15 containers per month arrived unmarked from Nuevo Laredo. They were stored in Zone 6 for exactly 72 hours before pickup. Only 3 people had access: Bobby, shift supervisor Carlos Martinez, and warehouse owner Dutch Williams. Each container held approximately $15 to $20 million based on weight calculations. Bobby discovered the real cost of this operation. Local businesses were forced to launder money or face violence. Truck drivers who asked too many questions quit suddenly. Border Patrol agents were living way above their salaries. 3 warehouse workers had transferred after seeing too much. Supervisor Carlos Martinez had been Bobby's friend for 8 years, but recently bought an $80,000 truck on a $45,000 salary. When Bobby asked about it, Martinez got defensive. "Mind your own business, Bobby. Some things are better left alone." Bobby started photographing shipping manifests with a disposable camera. He mapped pickup schedules and identified repeat customers. Zone 6 had a separate security system he'd never seen activated. The containers were tracked by GPS until they reached the warehouse. Then signals went dark. Night security guard Miguel Reyes mentioned strange visitors to Bobby during their breaks. "Dutch has been meeting with guys in suits. They don't look like shipping customers. They look like dangerous business. One morning in March, Bobby opened his notebook to find a page torn out, the one with pickup schedules. Someone had been in his locker. Martinez approached him during the shift. "Everything okay, Bobby? You seem distracted lately." 2 weeks later, Bobby got another call. The voice was angrier this time. "Bobby, you missed another payment. Our boss is getting impatient. I told you, I need more time. I'm working on it." "Time's up soon, Bobby. You know what happens to people who don't pay their debts." Bobby hung up, his hands shaking. He'd gotten into gambling trying to escape the monotony of his warehouse job. Now he was trapped deeper than ever. Bobby studied the cartel operation with methodical precision over the next 2 months. He calculated $240 million moved through the warehouse annually. The real owners were Sinaloa cartel members using Dutch Williams as their front man. The money trail was clear: drugs sold in America, cash returns to Mexico, laundered through legitimate freight operations. The same cartel controlled the underground poker games where he'd lost everything. Bobby scouted alternate exit routes during his smoke breaks. He identified container MX7751 scheduled for July 3rd pickup. He calculated he needed 4 hours minimum to complete the switch. He researched how to disappear completely with stolen cartel money. In May, Bobby's notebook disappeared completely. Martinez confronted him the next day. "You've been asking too many questions, Hermano. Dutch is concerned about your curiosity." Bobby calculated that one container held more than he'd earned in his entire lifetime. He owed money to the same criminals whose cash he was moving every night. "They've been profiting off me twice," Bobby thought, "paying me nothing to move their money, then taking everything I have at their poker tables. Time to take something back." Dutch Williams called Bobby into his office in early June. "Martinez tells me you've been documenting our operations. That's not very smart, Bobby. Not smart at all." Dutch didn't threaten directly. He was too smart for that. Instead, he showed Bobby photographs of his trailer, his daughter's hospital, and his ex-wife's house. "Laredo is a small town, Bobby. People who cause problems tend to leave town. Permanently." Bobby realized he was being watched, so he got smarter. He scouted security blind spots and discovered Zone 6 was unmonitored for 20 minutes during shift changes. Martinez started shadowing him, claiming it was quality control. Miguel warned Bobby that Dutch was asking about his family. Bobby called the debt collectors from home in late June, trying to negotiate. "I can get you $50,000 by next week. Just give me a little more time for the rest." "No deals, Bobby. $75,000 by July 4th, or you disappear. Permanently." Bobby discovered that container MX7751 contained exactly $26 million. His debt was $75,000. He could take everything and disappear, or take what he needed and risk getting caught later. Bobby found a GPS tracker on his truck. They were tracking every move. July 4th weekend meant skeleton crew at the warehouse. Most workers got holiday time off, security was reduced to one guard, and Mexican shipments were delayed until Tuesday, except for one emergency container arriving July 3rd at midnight. Bobby's debt deadline was July 4th. The collectors had been calling daily with increasing threats. His last call came July 2nd. "Tomorrow is your last day, Bobby. After that, we stop calling and start collecting." Bobby had completed his technical preparation over the past month. He'd copied the side exit key using an impression mold during his lunch break. He'd sourced a replacement container from the damaged goods warehouse. He'd created false manifests using Dutch's computer access codes. He'd planned his escape route through abandoned farm roads to avoid highway cameras. Martinez started asking specific questions during their July 2nd shift. "Why are you working so many extra hours lately? What's in that notebook you keep writing in? Dutch thinks you might be planning something stupid." That evening, Bobby sat in his truck outside a poker club where he'd lost everything. The same people who took his money at the tables were the ones threatening to kill him now. The same cartel that employed him owned both operations. 14 years I've been their mule," Bobby said to himself. "Tonight I become their nightmare." Later that night, Bobby overheard Dutch on a phone call in the warehouse office. "The Lewis problem needs to be solved after the holiday. Make it look like an accident. The family too. We can't leave loose ends." Bobby realized he wasn't just stealing money anymore. He was fighting for his life and his daughter's survival. As he walked to his truck in the parking lot, Martinez appeared, walking straight toward him. "Working late again, Bobby?" "Dutch wants to see you first thing tomorrow." Bobby nodded and drove home, knowing tomorrow would never come. Tonight was his only chance. At 2:05 a.m. on July 3rd, Bobby entered Texas Forward Freight Warehouse using the side access door. No alarm sounded. He confirmed that Miguel was patrolling the opposite side of the complex. At 2:12 a.m., he accessed Zone 6 using the master override code. At 2:15 a.m., he located container MX7751 and confirmed its weight and contents. Bobby executed his plan with 14 years of freight handling expertise. He switched the container's contents with damaged goods while maintaining the exact weight. He forged damaged in transit paperwork using Dutch's official letterhead. He created a disposal manifest showing the container being sent to the landfill. He loaded the original container onto his waiting truck using the forklift. At 2:35 a.m., Martinez's car appeared in the parking lot. He was checking on the operation earlier than expected. At 2:41 a.m., the container door jammed during transfer, making a loud grinding noise. At 2:44 a.m., Miguel's radio crackled with a security check-in call from Central Dispatch. Bobby worked with surgical precision while thinking about all the money he'd lost at their poker tables. Every move was calculated, every sound measured. He wasn't just stealing money. He was taking back what they'd stolen from him over 3 years of rigged games. At 2:55 a.m., Martinez entered the warehouse through the main door. Bobby had the container loaded but still needed to complete the paperwork. At 2:57 a.m., he heard footsteps approaching Zone 6 loading area. Miguel saw Bobby's truck through the security monitors but recognized it. The security guard faced an impossible choice: follow protocol and investigate his friend, or give Bobby a few more minutes to complete whatever desperate thing he was doing. When Martinez arrived at Zone 6 earlier than scheduled, Bobby had to improvise. He hid his truck behind shipping containers in the camera's blind spot. He used Martinez's own computer terminal to generate false disposal receipts. He created an audio distraction by triggering the motion sensor in Zone 3. He completed his final paperwork while Martinez investigated the false alarm in the opposite section. At 2:58 a.m., Bobby pressed against container MX7751 as Martinez's footsteps returned. This was the moment that would determine whether he saved his daughter or died trying. Bobby stepped out of the shadows and faced Martinez in the loading dock. "Carlos, I need you to turn around and walk away." Martinez stared at Bobby, then at the truck loaded with the container, understanding immediately what had happened. "Bobby, do you have any idea what you've done? They'll kill us both. I owe money to the same cartel we work for, Carlos. They've been taking my salary at rigged poker games for 3 years. I'm taking back what they stole from me." Martinez looked at his friend of 8 years, then at the radio on his belt, then back at Bobby. "You have a 2-minute head start. After that, I have to call it in." Bobby drove toward the exit as Martinez stood motionless in Zone 6. At 3:01 a.m., Bobby's truck passed through the side exit for the last time. At 3:03 a.m., Martinez reached for his radio. Bobby drove through back roads he'd known since childhood, avoiding highways and traffic cameras. His truck carried $26 million in cartel cash, but he wasn't celebrating. He knew the real danger was just beginning. At 6:47 a.m., Dutch Williams arrived at the warehouse to find Martinez with a fabricated story about discovering the theft at 3:15 a.m. Container MX7751 was gone, and the cartel's money had vanished with it. Within 2 hours, cartel soldiers mobilized across South Texas. Border Patrol agents on the cartel payroll were activated. Bobby's trailer, his ex-wife's house, and the hospital were placed under surveillance. A $500,000 bounty was placed on Bobby Lewis's head. Bobby reached his predetermined safe house, an abandoned farm property owned by his deceased uncle. He'd prepared this location for months with stored supplies, cash reserves, fake identification documents, and a different vehicle. Bobby called a payphone from a gas station. "The debt is paid. $75,000 in cash delivered to your usual drop point. We're even now." "Bobby, what did you do?" For the first time in his life, Bobby saw exactly what $26 million looked like. $100 bills vacuum sealed and organized in neat stacks. More money than existed in some small countries' annual budgets. Enough to pay his debt 300 times over. Bobby realized he'd crossed a line he could never uncross. He wasn't just a warehouse worker anymore. He was a marked man. But Sarah would live, and that was all that mattered to him. Cartel soldiers arrived at Bobby's empty trailer and found nothing. They questioned neighbors, searched the hospital, and threatened Linda before she escaped to Oklahoma. The manhunt spread across Texas like wildfire. Bobby implemented his carefully planned escape strategy. He burned his truck and switched to a motorcycle. He dyed his hair black and grew a beard using supplies from his hideout. He contacted an underground document forger he'd met during a brief prison stint 20 years earlier. He planned his route to Canada through back roads and Native American reservations. When Bobby heard helicopters approaching the farm, he had minutes to escape before they surrounded the property. The $26 million was too heavy to carry on a motorcycle. He had to choose between the money and his life. Bobby's notebook, left behind at the warehouse, contained enough evidence to destroy the entire money laundering operation. Using $75,000 from the stolen money, Bobby's gambling debt was paid, and he disappeared. During his escape north, Bobby discovered an underground network helping people escape cartel violence. A waitress gave him a business card. "These people can help you disappear." Bobby reached the Canadian border with $25.9 million. His forged documents passed inspection. 20 minutes later, Bobby Lewis officially ceased to exist. Dutch Williams provided testimony to save his own life, revealing 14 years of money laundering. The trials destroyed the entire network. Martinez got 15 years. Dutch got 8 years for cooperation. The underground poker operation was shut down, and dozens of other victims came forward. Bobby had inadvertently exposed a massive gambling racket that had been stealing from warehouse workers for years. Unable to locate Bobby, the cartel murdered Miguel Reyes. The message was clear: cooperation with Bobby Lewis equals death. Bobby reached Portugal with a new identity as Roberto Luis. He worked as a handyman in a coastal village and found peace. The Texas Forward warehouse was permanently closed, the cartel operation destroyed. Bobby kept only $200,000. The remaining $25.7 million was donated anonymously to organizations helping gambling addicts and people trapped in debt. 5 years later, Bobby sat on his balcony reading a newspaper. The poker club where he'd lost everything was now a community center helping people with gambling addiction. Bobby smiled as he read the headline: "Former Warehouse Workers Anonymous Donation Funds New Addiction Recovery Center." Sometimes stealing millions is the only way to break free from a rigged system. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.